Hello, dear beloveds, and thank you for joining me on a Friday evening. I'm mixing things up a little bit, and to be honest, I've had a day of being at home. I've got a sick little boy, and so today was a little bit different. So I would normally go live during the day, but I have made the decision to just send everybody out to watch the TV for a little while and come and hang out with you, because I really do get so much out of spending time with you. And Friday nights can be a very sacred time. I think that when we're changing our patterns, so we're moving from a work week or a busy time into the kind of the holiness of extra space and time, although I understand if you're like me and you have children that may be not always possible to have that downtime. What we can do is cultivate that kind of inner state of grace and sacredness that equips us to go into our weekend time with our family or whatever you're going to be doing in the next few days, but really just to space out, to create space in our lives for our holiness. And so tonight we're going to talk about spiritual sight, but we're also going to experience it. And I'm not sure exactly who's here, but it was made very clear that I was not sitting at my desk. We are on the meditation cushion. So if you're able to get yourself comfortable, I think we might be having a little journey together this evening. And that is very appropriate when we're talking about spiritual sight. I've realized in my time of talking about intuition that there are limits to what can be conveyed with the word intuition. That's nothing to do with intuition per se. It's the way that we as a culture perceive intuition. And I guess what I want to do is to convey something that is deeper than intuition, even though it's my understanding of intuition. So I hope that makes sense. What is intuition to me in its richest, fullest form? Well, if you've heard me speak about it before, you'll know that what intuition to me is in its richest form is beyond intuition. So intuition is a temporary phase of our awakening. Intuition is a language that we are able to develop as a way to bridge heaven and earth, or energy and matter, as a fourth dimensional language, if you like, that really allows us to express consciousness whilst we're in human form. And if I were to think of another way to describe that, or what is deeper than that, it would be spiritual or mystical sight. And as a priestess in my third level program, that's exactly what you spend a year cultivating, is your capacity to see with mystical or spiritual sight. So what that means is that you privilege the non-dominant senses. And so I don't mean literal sight, but rather that you are able to access the energetic paradigm first, and then your physical sight will kick in and all your other senses will provide you with more information. So mystical or spiritual sight is our intuitionless state that at the same time is intuition. So it's where we get to when we're no longer using intuition as a tool to get individual answers answered, where we've actually moved into our mystic so much that we're able to intuit or divine our life from a continual flow state where we are one with the infinite, where the infinite and ourselves are communing together. Now, that doesn't mean that we're there all the time, that we don't have days where we get into our fear and our ego and we forget or we drop out of that beautiful state. But once you've experienced it, you'll know that it is a state that can be accessed readily and at will, and in fact is the ultimate endpoint or aim of our life, is to live from our spiritual or mystical sight. The qualities of that are that we no longer take our life personally. We no longer take the events of our life personally. We're able to see archetypally. We're able to see through things happening to us, and to see that things are happening for us and from us, so that we are actually being served and serving ourselves and our awakening all of the time. This is a profound state where, of course, there would never be a question to ask, because you live in a constant communion And when you step out of that communion, you'll feel it bodily. You'll feel a sense of grief almost, that you've moved out of a flow state. When you are in it, life feels constantly as though you are being held or scaffolded by the infinite. That's spiritual sight to me. So it's looking beyond the human, and it's living in a generous state because you're quick to forgive. Your heart is open. It's easy to love. It's easy to hold others in their innocence rather than to see their guilt, because you are no longer in a guiltful state yourself. So we're kind of going very broad here, but I feel like that one of the things that I think has happened for me over my journey of teaching people about intuition is that my understanding of what I really want to be teaching, what I really want to equip people with, is so much bigger than the way that we allow ourselves to think of intuition. Intuition is all of the things that I'm describing, but we still have a very narrow view of what intuition is. And so by using this idea of spiritual sight or mystical sight, my great hope is that I am allowing you to see how intuition is your superpower. It is so much bigger than just how do I approach the oracle cards, or how do I answer a client's question, or how do I answer my own question. But it's actually a state of being. It's a way to live, and it's a way to live that is cultivated through the practices of the mystic. So of course, to inhabit mystical sight, we're going to have to practice the practices of the mystic, yes? And what are the practices of the mystic? Well, I think there's a few of you on here who can tell me very clearly. The practices of the mystic are silence, stillness, and solitude. And that within that space that you create, you make room for your true nature to appear. So very often you'll hear me say, if you study with me, that I cannot teach you to become more intuitive. I cannot teach you to become a spiritual leader. I can't do anything other than to support you to be free of the impediments. So we are not putting anything into you. We're removing the blocks to you knowing your truth. And this is absolutely the way it is when we are moving towards spiritual sight, is that there are impediments to accessing that sense of interconnectivity that is the precursor to spiritual sight. And I can serve you to release those impediments, but I cannot make you more intuitive than you are, because you are already God or the goddess or infinite unlimited consciousness. You do not need anybody to put into you anything that will increase your intuitive capacity. We simply need to be willing to carve out space in our lives for the practices of the mystic, which are the practices of fearlessness, which will allow us to become fearless in the pursuit of God or the goddess or the infinite unlimited consciousness. I'm being really cautious about the word God at the moment. I want to tell you why, just quickly to deviate. I have an Instagram account, which I love, and recently I hit 3,000 followers, in large part thanks to lots of you for supporting that account, and it was a really big moment. I got really excited, and then I shared a post, and the post had 3 words in it, and the 3 words were, I trust God. And almost within 24 hours, I lost about 20 followers, like bang. It was like, okay, this is really interesting. But I actually think that that's probably something I should be excited about, because of course, you know, if you've been hanging out with me, that God is a word that I'm really comfortable with. But I noticed very quickly a feedback that some people feel, obviously uncomfortable. So I've been noticing that I've been putting in infinite unlimited consciousness a little bit more, and also of course the word goddess, because the way that we teach goddess energy is that it is no less or different to God consciousness. It's simply that in our popular spiritual culture we think of the goddess, and we often think of it as less than God, not us, because we're awesome. But that is it's sometimes, I think, safer for people to inhabit goddess than it is to inhabit God. So if you're listening to me right now and that word doesn't feel comfortable for you, I would invite you to substitute it, or to think of it as goddess energy, or to think of it as infinite unlimited consciousness. So that's just a little side note. I am unapologetically all about God, because God to me is such a shorthand for that infinite consciousness that cannot actually be contained in most other words. So let's get back to the idea of spiritual sight. How do we develop or increase our spiritual sight? How do we actually take that, if you like, think of it as intuition at a quantum level, so really exponentially increase your expectations of what intuition can do, and then you have spiritual sight. We have the practices of devotion, and the devotion that I've spoken of so far is silence, stillness, and solitude. So running around in your daily life like a headless chicken is not going to get you to the space that we're speaking of. It is only by unplugging from the dream, the illusion, Earth School, that we can meet ourselves in our spiritual sight. Once we've cultivated that, then we can begin the process of living from that whilst also inhabiting the world. But do you understand? So it's like, if you want to train something, let's talk about drivers, learner drivers. Usually learner drivers are really powerfully scaffolded. They don't go out in a car on their own on the freeway doing 100. No, they sit with their mum and dad or a driving expert, and they get guided through courses or back streets or car parks, and they get their training wheels, you know, and they learn how to drive a car, and then incrementally they increase their capacity. So for us, going into stillness, silence, and solitude is the way that we can get, you know, really moving with our spiritual sight without the challenges of 3D reality. But eventually we will take that baby out onto the open road, do 100 or 120, and we will inhabit the world of Earth School through spiritual sight. So does anyone want me to break down the idea of Earth School? I'm going to do it. Earth School is where we come to train our superpower, which is our consciousness. So if we think of, we have infinite unlimited God consciousness, because that's what we are, and then we drop down into Earth School to come and train our consciousness. So this is where we train our superpower, and I'm borrowing this from one of my third level priestesses, Lausanne, who gave me that beautiful analogy. We come to Earth to train our superpower, which is our consciousness. And when we get into the dream of Earth School, it's very easy to get sucked into believing that it is real, because, as Caroline May says, we drink from the river of forgetting, and then we get caught up in the illusion, and that's it. There we go. We can't remember until we create the conditions that allow us to remember. Stillness, silence, solitude. So we go into those spaces in order to build our spiritual superpower, our consciousness engineering or encoding capacity, and then we're ready to step back into the dream, into Earth School, into 3D reality, and privilege our spiritual sight prior to our physical senses. So don't be literal about spiritual sight. I'm not saying like I'm literally seeing with my eyes. I'm clairsentient. So my spiritual sight largely comes through a feeling state. Your spiritual sight might be clairaudience. And all of this can be broken down further. And if you want to know more about it, you're going to come and have to hang out with me in the Initiate program. But at this stage, it's enough to understand that it's not a literal sight that I'm talking about, okay? So it's a spiritual sight. It's a metaphysical sight. It's an archetypal sight. It's symbolic. It doesn't communicate through the dominant gross senses of the human form. So we need to what's the word I'm looking for? Detach from that literalness that happens when we concretize the imagination. There's a whole other discussion. We won't get into that either tonight. But it really is about us being willing to see that we can see in ways that are not through sight alone. So we go into stillness, silence, and solitude, and we train these capacities. And then once we've got our P plates, we can come back into Earth School and we can actually start living from that, and then we can become masterful in that. But it's okay that at the beginning we're going to need these conditions. So I think the very best thing we can do is experience these conditions, where we're going to go on a little journey together now, where we're going to very quickly initiate you into another level of your spiritual sight. No matter where you are on your journey with your spiritual sight, with your intuition, this experience is going to increase your capacity to tune into your spiritual sight, because it's just available right now. I'm sitting on my meditation cushion. This is the instruction from the infinite, so we're going to go there. So who's ready to do that with me? Beautiful. I'm going to take that as an absolute yes. Let's go on a little Friday night soulful journey together. Okay, so I'm going to just push that back so you can see me. I'm going to invite you, if you're safe to do so, to close down your eyes And if you're not, if you're in an environment where there's people around, or you don't, your kid wrangling and you can't close your eyes, then just take your sight inwards, remembering that ultimately we will never need to go into stillness, silence, and solitude to access this. We just are going to learn how to be holding our inner sight in a primary and privileged way. So you can start practicing that tonight. So if you're not in an environment where it's safe to close down your eyes, it's easier if you can, but if you can't, it doesn't matter. Just use the breath and just draw your consciousness inwards. It's imagining yourself as though, being in the world kind of demands that you externalize your energy and you put yourself out there. And right now, I'm just inviting us all, even those of us who can close down our eyes, to breathe our energy back into our center. So you can imagine that all these long tendrils have been shooting out from you as you've had to navigate the world and all the things you've had to do. And now you're just going to breathe yourself back into that central point, that central column. And if you can, close down your eyes and take a deep breath in through the nose, let it go out through the mouth with an audible sigh. Letting go of all the effort required to bring you to this point in your day. And instantly, with eyes closed and breath deepened, you're moving away from the superficial world, going within to the world within the world, the place of your spiritual sight, your deep intuition. And of course, the location of this, as you know, is the physical and metaphysical heart. So you may like to bring your hands, as I have, into Anjali Mudra. In fact, I have my hands quite spontaneously in the lotus mudra, where you're just holding your palms apart. You may feel to do that also, or to place your left hand over your heart center. And this touch signifies to our consciousness that this is where we choose to operate from. And the lotus mudra is a powerful symbol of the divine feminine. And we're just breathing our way deeper and deeper into our heart. So every breath anchoring you into the cathedral of your heart. And the image of the lotus is apt. This mudra that my hands have formed themselves into is, not surprisingly, entirely appropriate. There is a saying, a very crude one, that I love: no shit, no lotus. Some people say no mud, no lotus, but in truth, the places where the lotus flowers bloomed were in the fields where people would use that field as a bathroom. And so it literally was a lotus growing out of shit. And with that smile upon your face, or your smirk, breathe yourself into an expanded heart energy, feeling that joy, that lightness, expanding the electromagnetic field of your heart outwards, fields within fields within fields. Our energy uniting for all those who are listening now and those who will listen later. There is no time and space. And our field, our personal electromagnetic field, expands with these feelings of joy, gratitude, appreciation outwards, so that we merge with the one mind. It is as she says, dear ones, no shit, no lotus. for the very purpose of your visitation to this paradigm is to grow your consciousness out of the field that is Earth. You do not awaken in spite of your life experiences. You awaken because of your life experiences. Yield to them. Suck the life out of them. Awaken because of them, not in spite of them. Carefully crafted miracles are the events of your life beyond the paradigm of human judgment. You indeed come here to activate consciousness, which is the very life force of all that there is. There are no accidents in this realm, and you are curators of your experience. What we mean is, no, do not buy into the illusion that you are hand-picking every event ahead of time. That is human narcissism. You are curating your response to the events that present themselves to you. That is your free will. Can you understand that difference? Good. Curate your responses to the field of dreams that passes before your eyes and yield the greatest results for your awakening. Not in spite of, but because of your life, you meet yourself as unlimited God consciousness. Feel your own heart energy, dear ones, expanding with every breath. What you are and what is possible is beyond anything that you could imagine from your human perspective. And this is the truth of spiritual sight. When we activate our spiritual sight, when we're willing to go into or out of the limits of our human dream, we understand what we cannot understand from the human perspective. And it is always available, but it will require your disciplined commitment. Take a deep breath in now. Let it go out through your mouth. And when you're ready, and only when you're ready, blinking open your eyes. Quite joyfully and unexpectedly, we had a visitor then, and I'm very grateful for that, although I never planned for it. And it is important for us to understand, and I know that my priestess sisters who I've trained in this, that even when we are speaking from another's perspective, from another energetic perspective, it is all one. Everything is of God. And so I cannot tell you exactly who or what that was, but I do know that it's in accordance with the vibration that we hold, high and light and full of love, and that it's here, its energy is able to enter into this moment because of the space that was provided by all of us. So we co-create that experience and make it possible for ourselves to access really whatever is within us, because it is all within us. So even when we channel, we are accessing something that is already existing within us. So that information and that initiation, that really was a very powerful energetic opening for me, and I hope that you also experienced that as well, of understanding a little more of how unlimited we are. And I feel more and more that the work of my life, whilst training people in the intuitive sciences, is to take them beyond their limits and to take us all beyond our very narrow ideas and expectations of what opening to our intuition can do. Because every time I experience something like we just experienced together, then I'm made aware of how much more is possible for us when we unplug from the human illusion. So I think that's all I'm going to do now. I feel really, really blessed. I feel blessed by all of your presence. And Rachel says it felt a little like Carly. Yes, it was. It was very powerful, and it's very unusual for me when I do channel to have my voice altered in any way, because usually the energy just flows as it's through me. But it was quite sort of stop-start there, and I hope that wasn't uncomfortable for anyone. And it's certainly not meant to be performative or special or clever. It's simply just, you know, honoring what's there and what's coming through. It felt very direct, but also just very loving, like really, really wanting us all to possess the keys to our own freedom. And I think we're at that stage now. Someone was saying this to me today. I can't remember who it was, and I'm so sorry for that. But it was either today or yesterday, I can't remember. But anyway, someone was saying to me, it's like this, the infinite consciousness is no longer, you know, we're not waiting for it to come and enter us. We are going towards it, because we have evolved as a human consciousness to the point where we can access these things at will. But we have to give ourselves the time and space, stillness, space and solitude. And we have to give ourselves the conditions to get our, you know, to get our learners and get our P's and then get out on the open road. If you're not from Australia, that's the system of learning how to drive in Australia. You go through those different levels, and it's really now just how much control do we want to take of our reality. And I really loved hearing that energy say, and I did get a name, and I haven't shared it with you. I'm not sure why, but I'll tell you, it's Anatoly, and I haven't heard that name before. It's not a name I'm familiar with. I don't know what that word is. It's familiar to me, but I'm not sure how, but it doesn't matter. but I feel like I should honor that by saying it out loud. So our capacity to curate our response to our life is really what it's all about. So I said I was going to finish. I am going to go finish. I'm going to go hang out with my family. I am in my pajamas. These are my tracksuit pants, and underneath my mala is my pajama top. So this is the closest you'll get to seeing me like this. And I am so grateful for all of you who are here, and for listening, and for sharing, and for co-creating that experience with me. It feels very special. I like hanging out with you lot. We should all, go on retreat together sometime. Mwah! Have a beautiful evening, morning, or day, wherever you are.